Hey everyone, Dr. Brian Schwabe here in another episode of Bulletproof Your Body. So today's topic is going to be on 5 different mobility tips to enhance your mobility and things you can take away right now from your mobility. So this is for anyone that's going through a mobility routine right now and really isn't getting results, or you're in constant pain and you're not really sure why you're doing certain mobility exercises, or anyone that just wants a little bit more clarity on why mobility works or why it doesn't work. All right, because I'm going to talk about everything from posture to warm-ups to why movement is important versus just doing foam rolling and just doing soft tissue mobility, and then finally why you should do certain exercises and how to determine what the best exercises for you are. Right, because this is what it's all about. You have to individualize your body. All right, so let's start with tip number 1. Tip number 1 is posture is important, but posture alone will not cause pain. However, posture will affect movement performance. So what do I mean by that, right? So posture, if we think about the most common posture that's out there right now, right? That's probably looking down at your phone, right? How many of us are just looking down at our phone constantly, texting away, responding to emails, things like that, right? We go through that probably 20, 30 times, maybe even more a day. However, that alone will not cause pain, right? They talk about text neck, things like that. There's a little bit more that's involved with pain, okay? So let's brush away from pain for a second, and let's focus on the actual movement of looking down at our phone, right? If we're doing that all day long, that can be a potential bad thing, but that alone will not cause pain. However, it will affect our performance if, let's say, we're a cyclist, all right? Let's say that we're looking down all day at our phone, and then we're gonna go out and do a ride, right? For those of you that are cyclists, you know that you're going from basically this position looking down at your phone to cervical hyperextension on the bike, right? And if you're not a cyclist and you go ahead and look at the Tour de France or any cyclist, they have their neck all the way up, right, on their body because they're cycling away. That's the position. So if you're looking down constantly, it's going to be harder to look up after that, right? You're going to move a little bit funky, maybe not right off the bat, but if you're constantly doing that day in and day out, your body's going to move a little bit funky to get in that position. It might find a way to get in that position, but over time, it's going to get tighter, it's going to move a little bit funkier, and then maybe that will cause pain later on down the road because you're going through 2 extremes of motion, right? You're getting your nervous system all set in one position, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, we got to change gears completely, right? Instead of going right, we're going left now, okay? So that alone can cause pain down the road, but right now all it's going to do is it's going to affect movement performance, all right? Do you guys see that correlation there? So that's tip number 1. Posture is important, but posture alone will not cause pain. However, it will affect movement performance, okay? So that's gonna go into tip number 2, which is, tip number 2 is move often and move well, okay? So what do I mean by that? Foam rolling is great, soft tissue mobilizations is great. I'm a fan of that stuff. If you guys have watched any of my other videos, I love that stuff. I think it's important. I think it's a great part of the mobility routine, but it's not the only thing. If you're foam rolling only, if you're doing soft tissue mobilizations only, then you're missing the boat, right? We have to move before and after those things to make a real change, all right? Moving and moving often and moving well is going to help us make a change. It's gonna help us with our overall mobility. If you're constantly foam rolling, if you're constantly doing soft tissue mobilizations, but you're still feeling stiff day in and day out, or you find yourself foam rolling 3-4 times a day to get relief, well then you're really not getting relief, right? You're getting relief temporarily, but you're not making lasting changes. And a lot of that goes back to moving and moving well, all right? So examples of that, right? Doing downward dogs, doing cat camels, going for a walk after our foam rolling, going into the positions that we need to get into for the activity we want to do, right? Let's say I want to go play basketball, right? If I'm going to just foam roll, but I'm not going to get into sidestepping positions or backward steps and things like that, then I'm not really preparing my body for that task, all right? Foam rolling alone is going to help with a little bit of that neural tone to decrease it so that we can move a little bit better or we don't feel as stiff. But then we got to get into the movements, right? We have to train those movements too. So that's tip number 2. Tip number 3, single most important tip right here of this entire video, assess and don't guess, right? There are tons of great mobility exercises out there, tons of great strength training exercises out there. If you look at the Instagram all day long, you can see tons of exercises, but they might not be appropriate for you. So assess, don't guess, screen your body, figure out why you're doing things, right? If you've seen all my other videos, I'm really big on showing you guys different ways that you can screen your body, simple assessments, so you have a reason why, all right? So ask yourself this question. If you have a mobility routine right now, why did you choose some of those exercises, all right? What made you choose them? And if you say to yourself, well, I feel tight, so I'm gonna stretch, my quads feel tight, so I'm gonna do a quadricep stretch. Well, why is it tight? Do you know why it's tight? So there's little questions you can ask yourself and little screens that you can go through to determine that, all right? The best one I can use is the hamstring straight leg raise, right? Hamstrings are an area that most people say I feel tight and stiff constantly, but a lot of times it's not true hamstring stiffness, meaning like flexibility or hamstring issues, but instead it's somewhere else. It's a core stability problem, which is tilting the pelvis back and forth. It's a hip flexor problem, which is tilting it into anterior tilt and stretching that hamstring so it's grabbing on. Or it's a glute stability problem, meaning that the hamstrings and the glutes are both hip extenders, but the hamstrings are the ones that fire first, right? So there's different things that we can do to actually determine what we actually need, and that's through full assessments or easy screens, all right? So tip number 3, assess, don't guess, okay? Tip number 4, make the most out of your warm-ups, okay? Warm-ups are super important for when you're getting into your activities, which is the whole point of us doing mobility in the first place. If we're gonna do mobility exercises, if we're gonna try to move better, it's usually for a reason. Hey, I wanna walk better. Hey, I wanna go play tennis better. I wanna go run better. I wanna do this or that better, right? I wanna play with my kids better. Whatever it may be, we have to figure out, what's a good warm-up routine in addition to just, getting into that activity. So for example, if you're static stretching all the time and then you're gonna go ahead and play tennis, that might not be the best option, right? Because static stretching, if you look at the research, has shown over time now for years that it decreases force output and power output. So what does that mean, right? What does that mean to me? Well, basically, if you're gonna go try to run or jump, you're gonna have less ability to do that, right? You're going to lose that power to actually produce that motion. All right, so static stretching might not be the best option before an activity. Dynamic warm-ups might be. So again, this goes back to what I just said in the last tip is get into the activity that we need to get into and finding those dynamic warm-ups like, step-ups or side steps or jump ropes, something that's gonna get the, a sweat going and something that's gonna prepare our body for the activity that we're about to get into. All right, so warm-ups are important, take those seriously. Tip number 5, okay? Tightness might not be true tightness, okay? So that tightness that you're feeling might not need mobility. Okay, so what do I mean by that? A lot of times, tightness can be perceived as tightness, but it's really due to protective spasms or a weakness somewhere, all right? So sometimes you don't need mobility. Sometimes you need strength or stability, all right? Now, how do you determine that? Well, this goes back to tip number 3, which is assessing, right? If you don't assess, you're not gonna know why you're feeling tight. But let's take the upper traps, for example. That's something that most of us feel, tight on a daily basis or a weekly or monthly basis, right? If we're rolling constantly, if you're one of those people that, hey, I'm rolling my upper traps out constantly, but the next day it feels tight again, well then there's something else going on, right? Why is our upper trap tight? Our upper trap is really working when our arms overhead, all right? And we're probably not shrugging all day long, so there's something else going on, all right? Our upper traps could be tight for a different reason. And most of the time it's because we're weak somewhere else, right? Our upper traps take over because it's easier for our shoulders to produce that motion. Maybe our rotator cuff is weak. Maybe our scapular stabilizers are weak. Maybe we're a chest breather and we breathe like through our chest each time, like this. See how everything rises with that? That can be reasons too. So again, tightness might not be true tightness. Figure out why you have that tightness and then go ahead and tackle it in a different way. So if you're going through the same routine, then ask yourself those reasons, ask yourself those questions. Why am I going through those constant routines? What is actually going on? Why am I feeling tight? And then using those tools like screens to determine what do I actually need? Do I need strength? Do I need mobility? Do I need motor control? Or do I need a little bit of everything, okay? So those are 5 mobility tips. Let's go through those one more time. Posture is important, but posture alone will not cause pain. However, it will cause problems with movement performance. Tip number 2, all right? Tip number 2 is all about, moving well and moving often, okay? Foam rolling, soft tissue mobilizations, those are important, but those are not the only thing. We have to move as well. Tip number 3, again, the most important one, assess, don't guess, screen your body out, know why you're doing certain exercises. Tip number 4, take your warm-up seriously, make the most out of those, okay? Dynamic warm-ups are more effective than static stretching. Prep the movement that you're gonna get into. And then finally, tip number 5 is tightness might not be true tightness. It might be something else. You might need stability instead of just mobility. So that's another episode of Bulletproof Your Body. Hopefully that gives you guys some good tips on, what mobility actually is doing, how to make the most out of your mobility, what posture is all about, and why that might not lead to pain, but how it could. And then, understanding why it is so important to assess your body and screen your body, right? If you guys have questions on this, throw out some comments. Any questions you have, email me on my website, brianschwabedpt.com, or reach out to me on Instagram at brianschwabedpt. I'm coming at you guys with this every single week for different episodes of Bulletproof Your Body. I'm going to show you guys how to move well, how to move better, how to actually get into the things you want to get into, but I'm going to show you guys why you should be doing certain exercises, right? Again, there's a lot of great exercises out there, but have reasons why. Screen your body, assess your body. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.